I'm Stephen Taylor. I'm the lead learning technologist for Blackpool-on-the-Fylde College, and we've been using Canvas since about March 2019, and I started with the company in October of that year. And we've just rolled Canvas out during a worldwide pandemic and got all the staff working on it and the students working on it. So it was definitely a baptism of fire. And hopefully through this, I'll be able to, and through this series, I'll be able to help people with understanding how Canvas works, what it can do for you, and what your various options are. We've been through the dashboard and through building pages in the previous session. And in this one, we're going to have a look at Canvas assignments and the things that you can do with it. So first of all, I've got a sandbox course for myself on here. When I say sandbox course, it's literally just a course that I've created for myself, so I can go in there and do what I want, and it's not going to affect anything else. It's not a live course. It's just one that I have complete control over. I'm going to go through what we can do with assignments and how we can build them, as well as pointing out a few things that you can get from Canvas Commons that might help you out as well as we go. So first of all, when you come into your course, along the side, you have a menu. Now, the default color for this is blue. We have a theme on it that's made it red because our college colors are red, black and gray. So we've made it red so it ties in with what we do, but it could be different colors for you. But down the side somewhere, you will have assignments. So if you click on assignments, it then brings you through to this page, and you get some buttons at the top here. And the one that we're going to look at to start with is this plus assignment. I'll go through these grades and what these different percentages mean in a moment, but we'll do building an assignment first. So I'm going to click plus assignment, and that's going to bring us through to this page here with lots of different options on it for creating your assignment with. First of all, we can give it a name. So I'll give it DigiLearn Test as a name on there. And then we have a box here, and this works exactly the same as the page did in the previous video. So you're able to actually go in and add whatever you want on here. Now, one thing that a lot of places do is they add the assignment brief into here. So if I come into here and I click on my file, and then I click upload document, I can now go through my folders and find the assignment brief I want to use. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to put on. Let's have a look. What have we got that I can put into here? Bear with me. Let's go through, try and find something that is suitable on there. Must be something in here somewhere. Ooh. There we go. Let's be incredibly sad and upload my army list for my Warhammer 40k games. So I'm going to click OK. When we put in the file in, it asks you about usage rights. So do I have the rights to share this? It is something that either I hold the copyright to, or is it under Creative Commons? Is it fair use? Things like that. So I'll put it in fair use for this one. And who holds the copyright? You don't have to put that in. But this is something that we've turned on to try and make staff have a think about. If they're sharing a file, do they have the rights to hold that or not? Do they have the rights to be sharing it in this public domain with their students or not? It's just making people think before they put things in. So I'm going to click submit, and on my view, it's looking like this. I'm going to click on there, I'm going to click link options, and I want it to preview inline, and I want it to expand by default. So now by default, this is going to fill up that box with, in this case, just an army list for me, but it could be your assignment brief. It could be whatever documents you expect the student to download. You can write in anything else that you want to put in here, put in any pictures, things like that. I'll just make sure that that's saved then. Always make sure to click done at the bottom, otherwise it won't save on there. Another thing that's worth doing as well, if you're ever changing one of these boxes and you highlight and you end up clicking out here, it automatically goes away. So you'll have to do it again. So if you're ever wanting to select something in here, it's best to click on it and press Control and A on your keyboard to highlight it all. So just so you know, that's something that you can think of with it. Like with other parts, we do have an accessibility checker, so you can check the accessibility and whether you've got any there. And you can also go in and do it in HTML if you want to. This is what they call the pretty HTML editor. It's quite useful because it splits things up for you in a way that you can see a bit clearer. Or you can go into raw if you're wanting to do more copy and pasting and larger things in there. You've got those as options. And then clicking this button takes you back to it again. You can also make this editing box full screen if you want to, for you to work on it. And then when you've finished doing full screen, you just press escape, takes you back. So that's the setting up what the student's going to be seeing when they first come into the assignment. Now we're going to go into the meat of it and setting up actually the points and how you want that to show to people. So in this box here, this first one, we've got points. So you can decide how many points you want your assignment to be worth. By default, it goes in as 0. It might be that you want it to be 100, for instance. So I'll put it in as 100 at the moment, but I'll show you some other ones later on. You can decide if you want it to go into an assignment group. So if you're doing a series of assignments that are related around the same thing, you might want to create an assignment group. So you can click this drop down, and there's ones that I've already made here before. We can click create group. I'll call it DigiLearn example. Add that group, and that's just going to group assignments together for us. And then we have, what do we want to display this? Not quite on that one. Matt's asked if you could use assignment groups for a portfolio. You kind of could, but this is making it, this is more when you go into the assignments part, it's going to have group things together. So you could group things by topic, you could group things by the module that you're studying. Because our courses persist year on year, we have 2021 ones, we've got 21, 22 ones, we'll have 22, 23 ones. You might want to group summative and formative together to keep them separate from one another, that sort of thing. We've then got the display grades as option. So you can have just the default as points. We've got percentage. We've got complete and incomplete. We've got GPA scale, which obviously we're not going to use. We're not American, but for those of our friends who are American watching this, you can scale it to GPA scale for yourselves. You can set it as not graded if you want to, and I'll come back to that one in a moment because that's quite a useful one. And for those of us who are British, you probably want to use a letter grade for it. Now, Canvas is built by Instructure, which is an American company. Everything around assignments has been built around GPA and around using numbers. So we have to do some creative accounting to make this work the way that we want to. So I'm going to go, once you've got letter grade, you'll see at the bottom this view grading scheme comes up. I'm going to click on there, and you can create various different grading schemes to do what you want it to do. So for instance, we might have BTEC there. So fail to distinction might be what we want to have. So we could have, if I type in anything less than 60%, it's a fail. If I type in 60%, it'll give them a pass. If I type in 75%, it'll give a merit. If I type in 100%, it'll give a distinction. Now, obviously, it's going to cause some problems for some students because it is going to show a number to them. So if you are using it in this way, I'd suggest always using the same number because you don't want some students to have 74% written. Yeah, they can be brutal. You don't want to have some students getting 74, some getting 60, all getting passes, but then going, well, why has he got 60 and I've got 74? You need to make sure that you've set it to say we're using the same number for it on there. Now, in other ones that I've set up previously, so here's another BTEC grading scheme where it's just going up in tens. So you've got 60% or less is fail, 70% or less is refer, 80% or less is pass. I don't know why it's going to 94%, but 94% to 80% would be merit and 100% would be distinction. But these are things that you manually enter in for it. In our college, we use a 24-point system. And those 24 points link to various different grades. So what I've had to do is when setting up this grading standard, I've had to go for percentages of 24 to get the numbers that we need. So different numbers correspond to different grades, and I've had to figure out the mathematics of what's going to give me the number that I need to get the correct thing on there. So this is what we tend to use as our default one, and by default we have this set to 24 for our students to use. But when we go into our view grading scheme, you can go on to manage grading schemes at the bottom, and you can create an entirely new one for whatever you need to do it for. And you set those boundaries, and you set exactly what it's going to say for each one. So for instance, if we wanted to have that you had to score at least 70% to pass, we can set this one to pass, we'll set this one to fail, we'll delete all the other ones that we've got, and then we'll set this number here to 75, and we'll set that number there to 0. And when we click save, that's now going to give it a name first, so we'll call this 75% pass, and click save. Now, if I was to use this letter grade for it, any score that was above 75% would be given the title of the score pass. Anything that was below it would be given the score fail. But it's all based on numbers and it's all based on percentages. So you do have to factor that in when you're doing it. So if I just go back now. There we go. Yeah, let's bring autosave back in. Let's go for our letter grade. And let's make it our 75% one that we've just created. So I've now put that in on there. We'll now see that come through when I do the marking later on. You do have an option here of whether you want to or don't want to count this towards the final grade. Now, some colleges, some universities in the UK, I know don't have final grade calculations like that. They don't want to have final grade calculations. So we advise that we have that ticked all the time. But obviously, you may want to use that to distinguish between summative and formative work. The formative will have that box ticked, summative things there for you. We then come to our submission types. So we have a few ones here. There's no submission. So this is, we don't want them to submit anything for it. Maybe on this, you want to set it up just so then you have access to SpeedGrader, which is a thing that you can give comments on. So they're not actually submitting anything. Maybe you're, maybe it's a work placement that they've been on and you want somewhere where you want to be able to give comments on what they've done on that work placement, and you still want to be able to grade and give it a level based on something, but there's nothing physical for the student to hand in. Probably set it to no submission in that case, and then you're still able to give the grade, you're still able to give the marks, but the student knows that they're not going to have to submit anything to it. We've got online is our next one, and you have various different options. Text entry gives them a text box they can use. Website URL, again, gives them a text box that they can input a website URL. Media recordings, that allows them to record or upload a recording directly into Canvas. So this could be really useful for if they've got a presentation that they've got to give and they want to have a recording of the presentation, they could record it directly into Canvas using the media recording tool for you. Student annotation, I really like this one. You give them a file and then they annotate it with their own information after it. So a bit like if you were marking something, they can then annotate that. So showing a file for Canvas Tunes, I'll put that up as their annotated files. Again, you get that usage rights on there, so I hold copyright for it. And also, there's the option of file uploads. And with the file uploads one, you can restrict upload file types. So how many times have you given students a task to do? And you say, right, I want you to fill in a document explaining this thing, or give me an essay, and they've come back to you with a PowerPoint. Or you said you want a PowerPoint from them, and they've come back to you with a publisher document or something like that. With this, you can limit the file extensions. So you can say, I want it to be just doc documents or docx, which will mean it has to be a Word document that they give. Although I'd always recommend putting PDF on there as well, just in case. If you want it to be a spreadsheet and you want it to be in Excel, you might want to say it's XLS or XLSX on there. Then they have to upload that type of file. It limits whatever else they can do. So that gives you that extra freedom on there as well. So you've got various different options there, and I'll show you what they look like to the student in a moment. Other things that we've got, you can set it to on paper. On paper is similar to no submission in the fact that Canvas is not expecting the student to put anything on there. However, this is telling the student that you are expecting to have something from them. You're wanting to have something handed in, but you're going to give the marks to them through Canvas. So for art projects and things like that, you might want to use on paper as your thing for it. And for those sorts of things, you may also want to have it as online with a file upload, so then they can take a picture of it, or with a media recording, so they can take a picture of it to share it. So then they've got a physical artifact of what it is that they submitted, but it's all stored through Canvas. But you've just got that option there for on paper. And then finally, we've got external tool. So these are things that have been set up by your admin for you to use. So when I go into here, we've got a few different things that we can use for there. So we've got ClickView. ClickView is a brilliant video hosting software that also allows you to do questions within it. So if I was to use ClickView and I was to use an interactive video for that, I can get Canvas to pick up automatically what have they scored in that ClickView video and put it into Canvas for me. So it becomes an automatically grading piece of video homework for them. Flipgrid can go in. So you can have Flipgrid videos going directly in to here, and they can record directly in here, and then you mark their Flipgrid video through Canvas for it. So it's giving you those other tools. LinkedIn Learning has an LTI that can tie into here. Office has an LTI that can tie into here. We've got one that's called Quizzes 2, and we'll be looking at that in my next video. We'll be looking at what Quizzes 2 can do. We've also got Turnitin, which obviously for higher education is needed. You need to have that plagiarism detection. So all of our higher education assignments have Turnitin there, and I'll show you how to set that up from the lecturer side of things, not from the admin side, but from the lecturer side. And there's a few other different things in there, and you can decide, do you want to load it in a new tab or do you want it to just load directly in? So I'll show you those after we've gone through what the online looks like for students. So I'm going to scroll down. We've got submission attempts. Now, personally, I always recommend that you have it unlimited. You don't know what's going to happen with that student. If you've got it limited to 2 and the student incorrectly uploads the assignment 2 times in a row because they've clicked the wrong thing, say they've got accessibility issues and they can't use the mouse properly and it shakes as they go around and they accidentally put the wrong thing in twice, then they're not going to be able to upload it anymore. So having it unlimited, I just feel that's something that I always want to go for. You can have group assignments. So we can click, oh, it doesn't support student annotation. So if I just take that one off now, you can click that and decide, do you want to assign grades to each student individually, or do you want to do it to a group? Do you want to set it to a group that you've already got set up, or do you want to create a new group? You can give it a name. Do you want to let the students sign up to it themselves? Do you want to automatically split them into groups? Do you want to automatically split them into groups with this many students per group? Who do you want to be the leader of it? Do you want them to be in the same section, or are you happy for it to come across the course? There's all sorts of different settings that you have to set those groups up for group work. And when they do that, it creates their own little section in the Canvas course where they can share files amongst each other. They can have a discussion group amongst each other, and they can work together on there. The various different options on there for it. We've got peer reviews. Do you want to allow them to review each other? Now, having been a secondary school teacher, the fact that it says automatically assign peer reviews scares me quite a lot, as does peer reviews appear anonymously, because I know what children can be like. But obviously, if you're working with adult learners and if you've got them well trained and you've used this quite frequently, you might want to do it automatically and say, I want to have one review per user, and when do you want the reviews to be due by? And you may want to put anonymity in there as well, potentially at one point. But personally, I'd always want to stick with manually assign, and then there's a separate menu that lets you assign who you want to do the peer review to whom. So you can make sure that you're not getting the class clown being put with the other class clown, just being daft together in their reviewing. You're being more focused on, I want this person to be reviewing that person because this person's quite strong in this topic and this person's quite weak. So you get that capability on there. Obviously, not for summative assessments, but for formative assessments, potentially quite powerful. We then come to another really powerful tool, which is our moderated grading. So most things, particularly at summative level, will always need a second marker. This forces that to be the case. If we're doing BTEC, you need somebody to IV work before it can go through. Again, this forces it to be the case. So we can set the number of graders. That's the number of people who are able to go in and mark the work. I always say set it to be one higher than what you expect it to be, just in case somebody goes off ill. So say you're wanting to have just one person's grading, set it as 2. So then if that lecture's off ill, you get a second one. If it's BTEC and you want to have second markers and you want to have an IVA, set it to 4. So then you've got, if the lead lecturer's off or is ill, then somebody else can step in for that. And then if the second marker is also off, somebody can step in for that. So it allows it to work that way. You can decide, do you want them to see the comments that each other have made, or do you want them to mark it completely blindly from one another on it? And then you select a specific person who you want to be the one who determines the final grade. So somebody will go in and mark it, possibly somebody else will go in and mark it, and then the person who you determine here will get a notification saying, this work has been marked. You now need to go and moderate that. And when you go to moderate it, you get to go through the things that people have done. And then when you've gone through 2 or 3 of them and decided, yep, I'm happy with all of these, you can then click a button and say, release all the grades to students. Otherwise, you can say, I'm not happy with this. I'm not going to release it. I'm going to go back to the teacher and say, right, you need to go back and you need to regrade this. And it'll go back to the teacher and say, this needs to be regraded. This isn't right. Something needs to be done on it. And through all this, you're able to have a conversation that the students can't see. So it keeps the conversations within the grading bit. And when we come to how you use SpeedGrader for assignments in a couple of sessions down the line, I'll show how that moderated grading can be used really effectively, particularly for BTEC marking. I'll go through that for you. We've got anonymous grading, so you can turn that on. That means that graders can't see the student names. Now, this is really powerful. It's really good. It gets rid of that unconscious bias that people might have. However, if you then want to see how the grades have actually gone, so you can store it in your records properly later on, you need to remember to come in and turn this off. Because what it effectively does is it blanks out the grade book for this assignment. So you can't see who's got what grade because it's anonymous. When you're marking it, it just comes up with student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, student 5. So when it comes down to, I've given the marks have been released to the students, I'm now going to come back into here and turn off anonymous grading so I can see who I graded what. Just so you can add it to your own personal records that way. And then we get to our assign to. another really powerful tool. In our case, as I said, our courses persist year on year. So until they're revalidated. Once they're revalidated, a new course is made. So we'll have 5 cohorts at least for each course. So in here, you can use the assign to assign it to a specific cohort of students, or to assign it to a specific student. So why might you want to do that? Well, let's say I've assigned it to a specific cohort, and I've said the due date is going to be next Friday, and I want it to be available from today for it. That's fine. But what if poor Rick has some personal mitigating circumstances? Maybe he's in hospital. Maybe he's got an EHCP that comes with it. In which case, we need to make some special facilities for that one student. Well, in that case, I can set a specific due date just for that student. I can give him an extra week from what everybody else has, and I can make it available from the same time. And that student alone is going to have this different due date. No one else in this course will know that student has a different due date unless they tell them. So it allows you to give that flexibility for them. It could also be useful if you're teaching the same course to multiple different classes. So I've got one class that I'm calling 2021 section, and I've got another that I'm calling Stephen Taylor Sandbox. And I teach these lots, and I teach them today. So I want to give them that length of time from today. Whereas I teach another class, I teach them actually tomorrow. I want to give them the same amount of time to work on it. So that means it goes to the 12th rather than the 11th. So you're then setting the same assignment to different groups and saying they can see it from a different time and they submit it in at a different time as well. So it's quite powerful for doing that. So if I click save now, it's telling me here, oh, you've not included this section with it. Well, that's good. I didn't want to include that section with it. I wanted it to go specifically to those 2 sections. I'm going to click continue. And this is what it now comes out like on that side. So that PDF is in there, so the students can go through it and see it. And it's telling you at the bottom that we've got various different due dates. Now we do have another tool at this bottom bit that's called a rubric, which is going to help us with marking. So if I click plus rubric, it puts one in by default of just a basic one for you to edit. Now, I advise you delete that one out. Sadly not, Jonathan, not automatically anyway. You can do it manually in that you can set it out that only those who have been graded get their results when you press this button. And then, so you grade one set of them, release the feedback, you then grade another set of them, release the feedback. But Canvas originally came with the ability to set feedback release dates. A lot of people stateside asked for that to be removed. So it was removed because they listened to their user feedback on it. Now, obviously, in the UK, it's something that we would really like to have. It's something that we would like to have, but they would see that as going back on something that they've submitted user feedback for. So it's a very difficult one from our perspective on there. So on these rubrics things, we can click find a rubric and you can find one that you've already got. Yeah, feedback release being staggered would be great, but it allows you to do it manually on that. It is just a pain that you're having to do it manually rather than automatically. So I'm going to use this rubric, which is our latest rubric. And as you can see, these are the points I was referring to before. These are very specific point values adding up to very specific grades. So that's why with my letter grade before, it had to be very specific. We had to look at what's the percentage of 24 that will give me F3 if I type 2 in it. What's the percentage of 24? That will give me C if I type 13 in it. So I had to do the percentage calculations for that to make it work. So that's one that we use. We can also add other ones in. So I don't want to use that one at the moment. I want to build a new rubric. I'm just going to give it its own name, test rubric there. I'm going to add a new criterion on here. I'm going to put spelling in. Set the criterion. And I'm not really interested in giving marks to it. So I'm going to tick this out like freeform comments. And I don't want points on there. So let's remove points from the rubric. And I don't want outcome results to learning mastery feedback in this particular one. I don't want it to mess things up for me on there. So I'm going to just tick that one to be safe. And I'm going to add another criterion on there. I'm going to duplicate the spelling one, but I'm going to call this one grammar. I'm going to duplicate again, and I'm going to call this one, I don't know, let's go for use of keywords. And in the long description, I'm going to put in try to use innovative edtech and DigiLearn sector at least once. So what this has done now, when I go into marking, which I'm going to do up here now, and I'm going to publish it, that'll let me actually mark it. I'm going to student view so we can see what the students can see. There we go, so students see it like this. And then they start the assignment. And we've got these various different things that we set up before. So we've got file upload, so they can use their files and upload it there. Or they've got text entry, so they can write in a box directly in. And you see it's the same thing that they get for creating our descriptions, creating our pages. It's the same layout there. They can put a website URL in with any comments. They can do media. So if we go record, upload media. Now, because I'm on Teams, it's not going to let me use my webcam at the moment. It's just going to say that it's being used by something else. But they could have their webcam on there to record it. They could be recording through their mic. They can upload an audio file or a video file onto it. There's a link directly to the Office 365, which isn't working for us at the moment. Well, and Plan Eastream, which isn't working either. But they're things that can come through based on what you've got your LTIs set up as. On the file upload, they have the option to use webcam, so the webcam can take a picture of something for them to upload. So various different tools that they've got, and they can add multiple files to submit. So I'm just going to choose a random file. Go back down to, let's do the same one I used before. There we go. Setting a file from Canvas to Teams, open that up and submit it. And if the student submits it on time, you can set it up for them to have that confetti come down the screen. I know it sounds very childish having confetti come down the screen, but there is something quite satisfying about seeing that come through. The students can also make new attempts and add other things. So if I do new attempt and I upload a different file, let's go down and get Moodle Teams. So obviously when we first started using, when lockdown first happened, we were still using Moodle at that point. We didn't launch Canvas fully until 2020, 2021 academic year. So that's why I've still got Moodle things on here. So if I submit that there through as well, the student submitted 2 things there now. I'm going to leave the student view. And as a tutor, I can now see there's 1 submission in there for me to grade. If I go into the home page, in fact, if I go into the dashboard, in fact, so bear with it whilst it loads. On the side here, I have a to-do list telling me what I need to grade. And there it's come up grade DigiLearn test. And when I click on this, it's going to open up SpeedGrader for me. And I can see what that student has submitted. And I've got various tools for providing feedback. which again, I'll go through in greater detail in a later thing. But it also lets me look at the different things that the student has submitted. So I'm not locked to just the one. I've got that different tools there for it for me. Now, I didn't click save on the rubric before, so it's not coming through at the moment. So if I just go back in, we've got various different tools up here as well. This button here is going to take me to the grade book. This button here is about posting grades. So do I want to hide them or post them? I've got various different settings here as well. So how do I want to sort things by? Do I want to sort them by submission status, date they submitted, student name? Do I want to hide their names in SpeedGrader whilst I'm on it? So I'm not seeing their names whilst I'm grading them. Various different things on there. I can click on here to go through the different students or to filter it by sections. So I can limit it down to certain students or certain sets of students for marking. Very powerful tools for that. And if I click this name here, it's going to take me straight back to the assignment here. So I'm just going to add that rubric in again. Let's freeform, get rid of points, don't post, and let's add spelling in here just to show you what it does. Update and then create. And then I go into the SpeedGrader again. We've now got this view rubric there, and I've got a box that I can write a comment in next to spelling. And what's great about that as well is I can save that comment to reuse it. So if I'm writing in something about spelling, quite often you're going to have a similar comment needed for every student. Either, that's great, you've done great on that one, carry it on, or it could be your spelling needs a bit of work on it. Why don't you try working on these things? It'll then save that for you to use again later on, just saving you an awful lot of time. And things that you have saved for comments show up in this little comment box there, and you can pick which one you want to use. And you can even test it on to show suggestions whilst you're typing. So if you just to save you a little bit of time when you're marking there to make life easier. But I won't focus anymore on marking because we've got a bit more of assignments to do first. So if I go into our edit size here, I come down and let's put on that student annotation one, just so I can show you what that looks like. Scroll down, yes, that one in. Save. And then I'm going to go back into our student view. I'm going to do new attempt. And now the student annotations come up, and this is exactly the same as what we get on SpeedGrader. So on SpeedGrader, you're able to mark by going in and putting various things in. So we can put little bits in like that and put a comment directly on it. In this annotation mode, students can do the same. They can put things in and put comments about it. They can highlight bits of the text. Now, it's moved over a little bit for me, which isn't great, because I need to go down to the bottom to get there. But they're able to highlight bits of text with the highlighter and then put comments on it. They're able to put text boxes directly in to put comments on. They've got a strike through tool. So you could tell them that their task is to go through this document and cross out words that don't make sense and write why they don't make sense. They get a freehand tool, so they can write freehand on it. And they get a bounding box. All of which come with the ability for them to leave comments. And the good thing about these leaving comments is once they've written a comment, you're actually able to go in and write a comment back to it. And in SpeedGrader, it's the same. When you've written a comment like this, a student can come back in and have a conversation with you within SpeedGrader about whatever it is that you've commented on. So you can say, why is this here like this? And they can actually respond in there. And you can have a deep conversation and make your feedback much more powerful through that. So that's the student annotation one. I'll just show you Turnitin as well, because I know a lot of us will use Turnitin. So if your tutor has set up Turnitin, click find, you go to your Turnitin and click, if your admin has set up Turnitin, not tutor, go through there, click save. This is going to change what this bit at the bottom looks like here, you get your Turnitin set up on here, and you make sure that you get your due date correct for whenever it is. Well, you want to set it to the latest date that's on there. Now, it's quite clever. It does pick it up quite well, but you can see on our edit in there, I'd set one of these to being the 12th of March, and it's come through as the 10th of March there. So I'm going to set it to the 12th, and I'm going to make sure the time is set to what I wanted it to be set to, which was 23:09 on there. Now, it does say feedback release date. We're not going to be using Turnitin to release feedback, so that can be set to whatever you want it to, because if you're using Canvas, you're not using the Turnitin things for it. We've then got some optional settings. You can decide whether you want it to be stored or not. So do you want it to be something that you're just checking against what's already there, or do you want it to be added into the repository so you make sure they're not cheating later on? We've got allow submission of any file type. I tend to recommend not having that on because you don't want it to be any file type. If you're using Turnitin, you want it to be something that Turnitin can actually submitting. Always tick allow late submissions, otherwise it's not going to allow anything past the due date for it. So whilst you don't want students to be submitting work late, you do want to let them have the ability to submit it late if they need to. It's also got a built-in grammar check as well, which is quite useful. It does spelling, grammar, usage, mechanics, and style for you. That saves you a job of having to read through and check it yourself. And then you've got some various options as well for generating reports. It comes as default set to students cannot resubmit. I tend to swap it to the middle one, which lets them resubmit until the due date. And I also allow them to view their own similarity results, because I don't feel it's necessarily fair that they submit something and then don't realize that they've plagiarized really badly and then get punished for that later. At least this is letting them know they have plagiarized pretty badly, so then they can go back and figure out, well, actually, what have I done wrong? What's gone wrong with that? How can I rewrite this to make it my own words? Granted, they should know that anyway, but it's giving them that tool. It also lets you upload a template as well. So if you've given them a template that you want them to work from, you can upload that template into here, and then that's going to exclude the text that's on there from the similarity checker, which just makes life a lot easier. It saves you having to do any calculations in your head about, oh, this has been picked up because it's the template I've given them. So you can just upload it on there and make your life easier. And then you can save these settings for future use, again, to make your life easier and submit it. And then for students, this is going to look slightly different. And I don't think it's going to work for me because it doesn't like the test student. It's just going to tell me it's not working. Scroll down to the bottom. Oh, yeah, it's giving me an error. But basically, they would have a bit on here that is a Turnitin submission box instead of the one that I showed you before. So it'll go through Turnitin, but then marking it is exactly the same as it was before. And if I go into the grades book on here, I think I've got a couple that I might have made earlier with similarity checks. There we go. So it just brings the similarity score through for you and gives you color coded things on there. So obviously green is good, that's less than 25%. You've got yellow for less than 50%, orange for less than 75%, red for close to 100%. And you've also got blue. Blue means that it's not found any at all, which is also something that flags up warning bells for me. If a Turnitin thing comes back and it's got no plagiarism whatsoever, then something dodgy is going on, because there's a limit to how many ways you can say things. There should be a bibliography on there as well. So something should be picking up somewhere. But if I click on here and I click on this little door, it's telling me on here that I can jump into SpeedGrader and it's telling me there's my similarity score on there. And if I click that similarity score, it will take me over to Turnitin, and it's going to tell me where's that plagiarism coming from. And in this case, because I've used lorem ipsum text for it, it's 100%, because it's come directly from that internet source. But you've got the various different things there, and you've got the e-rate of things in there as well. So you can see your Turnitin things there if it's been set up for you. So that is assignments in a very quick nutshell. One other thing I wanted to show is within Canvas Commons, if you come in and you search globally for Growing with Canvas, that gives you a pre-built course that talks you through building a Canvas course. So you get a lot of different things on there that are quite useful for you, just to go through and see what Canvas can do. And you can import this into a course of your choice. So again, into your sandbox is probably a good idea with it.